Once upon a time, there was a young man named Kim San who often wondered what it would be like to have superpowers. This thought plagued his mind, just like many others who pondered the same question. Little did he know, Kim San was about to have a chance encounter that would grant him extraordinary abilities. Kim San, a shy and introverted high school student with short black hair, had a fondness for reading manhwa. He was particularly drawn to charismatic villains rather than virtuous main characters. Little did he know that his unassuming appearance would soon be accompanied by newfound superpowers. One fateful day, while walking home from school with his friend Jun Sob, they found themselves unexpectedly ambushed by a gang from Tiong School. Beaten mercilessly, Kim San felt his life flashing before his eyes. In a desperate act of self-defense, he hurled garbage at his attackers. In a twisted turn of events, one of the thugs forced him to swallow the disgusting debris, leading to a hazy blackout. A week later, Kim San awoke with a desert-like dryness in his mouth, only to find a solitary Coke in his refrigerator. As he quenched his thirst, memories of the tormentors who had attacked him flooded back. Fueled by anger, he instinctively clenched his fist and unintentionally crushed a nearby jar, oblivious to his newfound strength. As Kim San ventured outside, anger still smoldering within him, he couldn't help but recall the faces of those tormentors. With a surge of fury, he struck a nearby pole, causing it to collapse under his unexpected might. Chaos erupted as the power supply system was severed, prompting angry shouts from bewildered residents. Fearing the consequences, Kim San hastily fled the scene, unaware of the extent of his own capabilities. Returning home in a state of confusion, Kim San's eyes were drawn to the crumpled jar near the trash can. Astonishingly, he found himself able to crush a coin effortlessly, like a mere piece of paper. Thus began his renewed experimentation with his newfound powers. He effortlessly tore through books and shattered frying pans, reveling in his seemingly limitless strength. Driven by curiosity, Kim San entertained a daring idea. Could he possess invulnerability alongside his super strength? Testing this theory, he struck his own hand with a kitchen knife, only to witness it shatter upon impact. Bewildered by the origin of his powers, he ascended to the rooftop, seeking to push his abilities to the limit. Wondering how high he could jump, he launched himself skyward, unaware of the unexpected consequences that awaited him. As Kim San soared through the air at tremendous speed, he felt an intense heat engulf him, making it impossible to keep his eyes open. When the impulse finally subsided, he found himself in a bewildering space, only to realize he was hurtling back to Earth. Crashing down in a Chinese desert, he lay unconscious for an unknown period, experiencing the sensation of every bone in his body breaking. Miraculously, upon awakening, he discovered himself completely unharmed. With newfound confidence, Kim San discovered the ease with which he could traverse vast distances in a matter of seconds. He watched TV in his living room, flipping through channels, until he stumbled upon an interview with a self-proclaimed hero. Despite the cheering of jubilant citizens, Kim San couldn't help but find the hero unimpressive. In his eyes, this hero was merely putting on a show, as the villains he caught were hardly worthy adversaries. This realization sparked a mischievous idea within Kim San's mind. He could become a villain himself, using his superpowers to become a charismatic and formidable antagonist. After all, in comics, the villains were often rich and alluring, while the heroes constantly struggled against their schemes. High school became a mundane routine for Kim San as he wrestled with his newfound aspirations. 3 days had passed since he resolved to become a villain, yet he found himself grappling with uncertainty. Unsure of where to start or what actions to take, his determination began to wane. Just as he contemplated the possibility of becoming a hero instead, the bell rang, signaling the end of class. Approaching him, Jun Sob inquired about his well-being and absenteeism. Kim San launched into a narrative about his plans to defeat their tormentors, but deep down he felt lost and unsure of how to proceed. He dismissed his friend's words as mere boasting and fabrications. Their conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Lee Ji-yoon, a girl who harbored affection for Kim San. She questioned his absences and playfully accused him of becoming a slacker, prompting Jun Sob to protest with jealousy. As Kim San pondered his next move, torn between heroism and villainy, his journey had only just begun, with uncertainty looming on the horizon. At that moment, our protagonist found himself at a loss for words, caught up in admiration for Lee Ji-yoon's beauty. Lee Ji-yoon assured Kim Sang that he wouldn't miss any lessons, promising to keep an eye on him before departing. Jun Sob, Kim Sang's friend, remarked that while Ji-yoon had a cute face, she was still just a kid. He teasingly asked Kim Sang about his romantic intentions toward her, sparking a surge of anger within him. Jun Sob chuckled, claiming that everyone in the area knew about Kim Sang's feelings for Ji-yoon. Their conversation was abruptly interrupted by a group of third-year students who collected money from the students each week. This sight fueled Kim Sang's anger once again, and he couldn't stand the situation. When the third-year students took money from Ji-yoon, he mustered the courage to tell them to leave. However, they disregarded his words, with one of them placing a hand on his shoulder, demanding to know what he said. Filled with fear, Kim Sang couldn't bring himself to repeat his words normally. Feeling bewildered, he reluctantly handed over the money before they departed. One of them delivered a final threat, promising to keep an eye on him. After school, Kim Sang sat on a bench contemplating the events that had transpired. He possessed the strength to pulverize stones into powder and split skulls in an instant. But deep down, he hadn't changed. He remained the same coward who had feared those punks. Would he ever be able to change? In the confines of Kim Sang's home, he sat at the table engrossed in crafting something special, a new mask. Upon completion, he marveled at his work, even giving the mask a name, though his embarrassment soon flushed his cheeks. Curiosity got the better of him, and he decided to try on the mask, only to be disappointed by the results. The slightest movement caused it to shift uncomfortably. In a desperate act, he settled for a simple medical mask instead. Every day, Kim Sang circled around Tiong School, yet he couldn't bring himself to confront them fully. Sometimes he encountered other criminals and attempted to extort money, but fear gripped him, causing him to flee. As the second week of his adventures passed, he felt a sense of pride, believing he had become someone significant. Although he had grown accustomed to their repugnant faces, he still couldn't gather the courage to stand up to them. He resolved to find easier targets and stumbled upon two students from Tiong School wearing dark uniforms. They appeared less intimidating, and he tried to bolster his confidence by repeating affirmations in front of the mirror. In a dimly lit alley, the two Tiong School students engaged in conversation about their misdeeds, one with red hair and the other with yellow. Suddenly, an unexpected intervention occurred. It was the hero whose interview Kim Sang had watched on TV, Paul. Normally, he wouldn't concern himself with such trivial matters, but in this instance, he couldn't turn a blind eye. In that very alley, Paul advised the bandits to go home. The red-haired man drew a knife, asserting that heroes were no different from ordinary people. Kim Sang recognized Paul from the news, surprising the hero himself, yet he remained composed. Paul remarked that children these days had strayed so far that they carried knives with them. In a swift motion, the bandit with the knife lunged at the hero, only to have his blade shattered into pieces. Taken aback by the hero's unexpected blow, the bandit lost touch with reality, reeling from the impact that sent him flying several meters back. Initially, Paul had intended to jest with them, but the attempted murder swiftly changed his course of action. The yellow-haired man, taken aback by the hero's formidable strength, found himself at a loss for words. Sensing his fear, Paul advised him to take his friend and retreat, cautioning against the use of knives in fights. Angered by the hero's intervention, the schoolboy initially voiced defiance, but soon succumbed to praising Paul after seeing his stern gaze. Paul left, Kim Sang seethed with anger, vowing that he would rather die than accept help from the hero. He realized that despite his newfound power, he remained a pathetic coward. Overwhelmed by shame and anger at his own weakness, he experienced intense anger for the first time. Suddenly, an inner voice spoke to him, urging him to embrace killing as a solution and questioning why he tolerated his current circumstances when he possessed such immense power. The inner voice promised to assist him and take matters into its own hands. At the same time, a group of schoolchildren strolled through the alley, engaged in conversation. One of them noticed Kim San, who knelt while clutching his head. The observant young man introduced himself as Song Chan-yel and demanded to know who Kim San was. When he received no response, he grew agitated, assuming Kim San had been beaten. Meanwhile, the inner voice continued to goad Kim San. Chan-yel picked up a metal stick, intending to strike Kim San with it, but the insistent voice in Kim San's head pushed him towards killing the scum. While Kim San hesitated about resorting to murder, the voice grew relentless, overwhelming him with anger. In a fit of rage, he struck Chan-yel, who crumpled under the force, his arm severed. Kim San, bewildered by the turn of events, couldn't comprehend where Chan-yel's arm had gone, but immediately felt pain in his shoulder. Overwhelmed by the painful shock, he collapsed into a pool of his own blood. Witnessing the horrifying scene, the deceased's friends fled, branding Kim San a monster and a murderer. In the aftermath of the shocking event, the main character began to grasp the weight of his actions. He had taken a life. Unable to bear the burden, he fled from the crime scene. The news soon circulated, reporting the discovery of a young man's body in a Sinchon district alley. The victim, Song Jang-yel, an 18-year-old second-year student from Jongyun High School, had died from acute blood loss and traumatic shock after his right hand was severed, likely with a sharp object, possibly an axe. Paul, informed of the incident, blamed himself for the crime occurring in the vicinity where he had been patrolling the previous day. Though the doctor found it implausible, witnesses testified that the criminal had severed the victim's hand with bare hands, describing the perpetrator as incredibly strong and ferocious. The doctor voiced his disbelief, suggesting the involvement of an evil entity since a regular person couldn't possibly commit such an act. Another individual in a bathrobe mentioned that the criminal had worn a mask, prompting Reese-Paul to consider Kim-san, who he had seen wearing a mask earlier but knew nothing about his activities after their encounter. Reese-Paul bid farewell to the doctor and set off to investigate further. Meanwhile, on a seemingly tranquil street bustling with people going about their business under the pleasant weather, chaos erupted. An explosion shattered the calm, leaving bewildered onlookers to witness the terrifying sight of a monstrous, fanged, purple-skinned villain. With swift movements, the villain impaled a nearby individual, sending people fleeing in panic. But the evil hand was not alone. A larger, gray-skinned villain with a yellow mask, underpants, boots, and gloves accompanied it. The panicked crowd noticed a man who boldly walked towards the villains instead of fleeing like the rest. It was Hanil, the renowned hero, dressed casually and wearing glasses. The evil hand recognized Hanil and instinctively recoiled, aware of his reputation as the strongest man on the planet. The purple villain expressed his intention to verify the rumors of Hanil's extraordinary strength. Unfazed by this display, Hanil coolly retorted that the villain would soon witness the truth firsthand. Engaging in a war of insults, the monster's frustration reached its boiling point, prompting it to leap at Hanil. However, Hanil conjured a lightning bolt in his hand and swiftly cleaved the villain in two. Witnessing this display of power, the fiery devil, the second villain, charged at Hanil. In response, Hanil summoned the spirit of the Holy Virgin, Sohwansel, with the aid of a talisman. The villain, who was mere child's play compared to the maiden's hand, was effortlessly swatted away, vanishing without a trace. The onlookers, overjoyed by their idol's triumph, crowded around Hanil, lavishing him with praise. A young girl approached him, requesting a photo and boldly asking if Hanil would marry her when she grew up. Amused and taken aback, Hanil playfully responded that he would be delighted to. The crowd soon clamored for more photos, but a man in a suit and dark glasses came to Hanil's rescue, urgently claiming they were needed elsewhere. Answering the call on his phone, Hanil heard the voice of Reese-Paul, who informed him about the incident from the previous day and requested a gathering of all the heroes that evening. At the headquarters of the Gregory team, Reese-Paul relayed the details of the crime, indicating that someone was committing heinous acts of which they were still unaware. Bloody Lynx, a member of the Gregory team, expressed his disbelief, questioning if high school students could really have the capability to sever someone's hand. Master Jin, another team member, acknowledged that if Reese-Paul had called them all together, it must be a grave matter. Reese-Paul explained that the victim's hand wasn't merely cut off, but torn off with bare hands, something even he was incapable of doing. The revelation surprised the heroes, and Russian Blue, a feline member of the Gregory team, remarked that if Reese-Paul couldn't do it, then the other heroes were unlikely to possess such power. Reese-Paul concurred, noting that among the heroes he knew, only the cat and Hanil had enough strength for such a feat. Bloody Lynx, feeling slighted, challenged Reese-Paul, suggesting that if the leader couldn't do it, then surely the Lynx wouldn't be able to either. Esther, another member of the Gregory team, who had witnessed their Friday quarrels before, compared them to her drunken grandfather and father's brawls. Their disagreement was interrupted by a cat who inquired about Dark's whereabouts and whether they could entrust this matter to her. According to Reese-Paul, the cat once again skipped the meeting, likely out in a dark alley dealing with criminals. Hanil concluded that a person with incredible superpowers had appeared in their territory, potentially a hero or a formidable villain. In Kim-san's house, the narrative shifted to the first-person perspective of Kim-san. He sat on his bed, hugging his legs, contemplating the recent murder that had taken place. In the midst of watching the news, Kim-san's guilt was nowhere to be found. Suddenly, a voice in his head assured him that he had done the right thing and need not fear, for he possessed the power to eliminate anyone who stood in his way. Something clicked within him, triggering a transformation. A month had passed since the murder, and Kim-san found himself skipping classes and wandering the district to extort money from others. He felt no remorse for his actions, and everything seemed to be going well. He was no longer afraid of the intimidating faces around him, particularly those of the local troublemakers. One day, he spotted two guys sitting in an alley and decided to approach them. As he got closer, one of them attempted to strike him, but Kim-san calmly evaded the blow and retaliated, landing a punch to the jaw. Previously, such a confrontation would have terrified him, but now he felt invincible. Encountering these situations had become commonplace, and he hadn't encountered anyone other than troublemakers lately. Extracting money from them had become routine, and he couldn't help but feel surprisingly content. Lost in thoughts about his newfound lifestyle and contemplating expanding his activities, Kim-san was interrupted by Ji-yoon, who called out to him. Curious about his whereabouts, she noticed his masked face and inquired about it. Trying to divert the conversation, he asked her what she was doing there. She expressed concern about his absence from school and seemed relieved to see him safe. Ji-yoon also noticed something in his hands, but he dismissed it as nothing. As she questioned him further, a sudden punch from Ji-yoon caught him off guard. Laughing, she playfully hit him a few more times and warned him of dire consequences if he skipped again. Despite the beating, she smiled and instructed him to show up tomorrow, all beaten up. Kim-san assured her that he understood and offered to accompany her home, but she declined, asserting her independence. With that, Ji-yoon left, and Kim-san missed his chance to bid her farewell properly. Back at Kim-san's house, lying in bed, he realized he had completely forgotten about school amidst all the events. He questioned the importance of attending school, but ultimately decided that Ji-yoon was right and that he should go. As Kim-san walked down the corridors of Nanju High School, his friend Jun-sab called out to him asking about his absence. Kim-san brushed it off, claiming to be busy with business, though Jun-sab suspected he was just starting an A9 marathon. Their conversation continued as they reached the classroom door, where Ji-yoon spotted them. Her face lit up upon seeing Kim-san, and she hurriedly beckoned him inside. Suddenly, a voice commanded everyone to take their seats. It was the third-year students collecting their weekly tribute. Kim-san had changed, and he no longer feared them or their menacing faces. One of the third-year students, the leader with short hair, ordered everyone to contribute 500 won, emphasizing the urgency as they had more classes to collect from. Jun-sab became their immediate target. Comparing himself to his past self, Kim-san noticed the absence of fear when confronted by the third-year students. When it was his turn, he decided to play a scene, pretending to have nothing to pay with. This infuriated the student who had commanded everyone to sit, believing Kim-san was mocking them. Memories of their previous encounter fueled Kim-san's anger, and the voice within him goaded him on. As Kim-san fought to control his rage, one of the third-year students approached him, questioning what had happened. Kim-san brushed him off, and the student threatened him before urging the group to move on. Before leaving, Kim-san asked where he should wait for them. The leader, frustrated by the question, repeated it. Fearlessly, Kim-san asked again. Jun-sab, astonished by Kim-san's audacity, drew attention to their altercation. Before the leader could strike him once more, the bell rang, saving Kim-san from further confrontation.